For exactly 3 minutes, I was completely blind. Thousands of kilometers from home in a mobile command cabin, the only thing in front of me was a pulsating red screen with 2 words: signal lost. The protocol was clear: retreat, run. You're the bait and your usefulness is over. The official version they told the press is that I had quick thinking under pressure. They gave me a medal for it. The truth is, I disobeyed a direct order. I bet my career and the start of an international conflict on a split second, on a ghost image I should never have seen. They wanted me as a pawn. I decided to flip the whole board. What I did in those 3 minutes of silence was the best-kept secret of my unit. This truth almost cost me everything. So listen carefully, because the story they tell about heroes isn't the whole story. If you want to know what really happens in the shadows, subscribe now, and comment below if you believe a man can be a hero and a traitor at the same time. The commander's voice was like gravel being stirred in a bucket. Light up their radars, Ghost 4. Fly the pattern, get their attention, and get out. The words were simple, direct, almost routine. He handed me the tactical tablet, its familiar weight in my hand. The air in the mobile command unit was thick, a rancid mix of reheated coffee and the metallic smell of ozone that electronic equipment exudes when under pressure. In the background, the low, constant hum of the servers was the only soundtrack, a mantra for our work. He didn't even look me in the eye. To him, I was no longer a person. I was a call sign, a dot on a map, a piece to be moved, perhaps sacrificed, just a function. I accepted the tablet, my reflection on the dark screen for a split second before it lit up with maps and trajectories. My fingers found the console, the cool, smooth surface, an old acquaintance. I began to calibrate the drone's controls, a precise and memorized dance on the panel. The older officers in the room sometimes watched me with a mixture of suspicion and curiosity. To them, I was just a kid, an expert in a technology they didn't fully understand, playing what seemed to be an expensive and lethal video game. They saw my agile fingers, but not the storm of calculations in my mind. They think this is a game. They don't see the wind equations, the trajectory corrections, the cold ballistics running through my head right now. Every touch on the joystick, the palm of my hand, feeling the smooth and precise resistance. Every click of a switch, arming for flight. It was a dialogue, a conversation between me and the machine, a promise of obedience that I demanded from it before sending it into enemy skies. I was tuning my will to its, turning it into an extension of myself. With the calibration complete, I initiated the launch sequence. On my main screen, the drone's camera showed me the world outside. The view rose vertically, trembling slightly against the desert wind, and then tilted forward, starting the pre-programmed flight pattern over the arid landscape of Iran. The real world with its smells and physical presence began to disappear. It was replaced by a torrent of pixels and telemetry, green and blue numbers scrolling in the corner of my vision. The ambient sound of the command unit was muffled by the soft hiss of radio static in my headphones, the sound of the void between me and my bird of prey. I was now an observer, a digital guardian angel flying over a territory that only existed for me as data. The weight in my chest was familiar, a professional detachment I had cultivated. I was no longer the boy in the air-conditioned container. I was Ghost 4, and my drone was the bait. There goes the bait. From now on, I'm just a ghost in their system, a blip on their radars, a problem for them to solve, exactly as they wanted. And for now, I would play my part. I was in the middle of the third loop of the pattern, a lazy and perfect figure 8 drawn in the enemy sky. The drone was stable, a point of precision in the void. I was the all-seeing eye, but an eye that was not meant to be seen, only felt. And then it happened, a violent oscillation in the telemetry. The horizon line on my screen trembled as if the Earth itself had had a spasm, a massive power surge from below, a spike that wasn't on any intelligence map in any report. The screen flickered, a split second of absolute darkness that felt like an eternity. And with the darkness, a sharp, painful hum pierced my headphones. A thin, electric sound like an insect being electrocuted right inside my skull. This isn't normal interference. It wasn't a sandstorm or a standard electronic defense system. What the hell was that? It's not in the briefing. My heart, once a slow and steady drum, gave a hard, painful beat against my ribs. Before I could process the thought, everything fell apart. The video feed, my window to the world, froze for a moment, the grainy image of an endless desert, and then dissolved into a cascade of pure static, like snow falling on a dead screen. Immediately, the main screen flashed from its calm blue to an aggressive, pulsating red. 2 words in brutal capital letters burned into my retina. Signal lost. And then the silence. The voice of my commander, the hiss of the radio, the hum of the drone. All gone. The silence in my small command cabin was absolute, heavy, deafening. The only sound left was my own breath, suddenly quick and shallow, the air scratching my throat. Blood pounded in my ears. I'm blind. I'm deaf. I'm alone. The protocol hammered into my head in countless simulations was a siren screaming in my mind. Retreat. If you lose contact, you turn to smoke. Run now. My hand trembled over the control that would initiate the blind return maneuver. But something held me back. A stubbornness. A refusal to be just the piece that runs off the board. Desperately, my other hands flew over the keyboard, an instinct taking over. I ignored the dead primary channels and started scanning the secondary frequencies, the dark alleys of the radio spectrum, looking for anything. An echo, a whisper. And that's when I saw it. It was faint, almost imperceptible amidst the noise. A sliver of encrypted data leaking from a local network that shouldn't be there. Unstable, flickering, but it was there. In a small diagnostic window I shouldn't even be looking at, lines of ghost green code began to scroll, slow and enigmatic. It was like seeing a lit candle through a thick, cold fog. It wasn't my signal. It was theirs. This isn't just a radar. This is a command link. They're talking to each other right under my blind bird. And I think I'm listening. For 3 minutes, the universe shrank to the space of 1 cubic meter of my cabin. There was only the low hum of my console and the frantic, uneven beat of my own heart against my ribs. The return to base alarm flashed insistently in the corner of the screen, a red icon pleading to be obeyed. I ignored it. It was just more noise in the chaos. My hands moved on their own, fingers flying over the keyboard with a precision that came not from calm, but from pure adrenaline. I was writing a makeshift script, a digital key to break down the door of that signal I had found, to turn it from an enemy whisper into my own eyes and ears. The smell of my own sweat filled the cabin, an acrid metallic odor. The rapid clicking of the keyboard was the only sound, a miniature machine gun in the silence of my isolation. Each line of code was a step further from protocol, from safety, from my career. Career over. Court-martial at best, prison at worst. But I couldn't stop. Curiosity was an itch, in my soul, a visceral need to know what was on the other side of that static. What was so important for them to risk a transmission so close to my operating zone? I had to see. And then I saw. The signal stabilized. The static disappeared, not to reveal the familiar image of the desert under my drone's wings, but theirs. The image was grainy, unstable from a security camera or something similar. It showed a mobile command complex, antennas, and hastily assembled tents. And getting out of an armored vehicle, a man, tall, broad-shouldered, wearing a uniform I recognized immediately. The golden insignia on his shoulder, even in the low-resolution image, shone under the desert sun. He was a high-ranking general, a 3-star strategist, who, according to our intelligence, was supposed to be hundreds of kilometers away in a fortified capital, a target that shouldn't exist. The air froze in my lungs. The adrenaline turned into a terrible, icy clarity. They didn't know I was there. They felt safe, protected by their own audacity and my forced silence. And I had a Hellfire missile armed and ready less than 30 seconds of flight time from their coordinate. The world split into 2 realities, mine inside a metal box, and theirs about to be erased. My thumb hovered over the fire button. I didn't ask for permission. There was no one to ask. There was no time. My mind didn't think, it just acted. I rerouted the drone's path, a maneuver that would take seconds to execute. the crosshairs once fixed on the void, now locked onto the command vehicle from which the general had emerged. Lock confirmed. My thumb pressed the button. There was no click, just the silent pressure against the plastic. On my screen, the small ammunition icon changed from armed to launched. A silent white flash crossed the video for a split second, and then their world, the grainy image I should never have seen, disappeared. It was replaced by a pixelated fireball, a flower of destruction that bloomed and died in the stillness of my cabin. A numbness took over me, a cold that started at my fingertips and climbed up my arms until it settled in my chest. I didn't look away. I watched until the smoke began to dissipate. It's over. I just started a war. Or did I just end one? In that deafening silence, I had no idea. The beginning of the end of peace was a memory. A distant memory of something called weight. There, where I was, in the immensity of that light that was also sound and love, there was no weight. There was no body. There was only being. I was a note floating in the most perfect symphony, a color in an infinite rainbow. And then I felt something. A rope, an invisible anchor tied somewhere very deep in the center of what had once been my chest, began to pull. The pull wasn't gentle. It was inexorable, heavy. The symphony began to fade like a radio losing its signal. The light pulsed and began to recede, as if I were falling backward away from it. And with the distance came gravity, a painful longing for bones, for muscles, for breath, for the burden of the body I had celebrated abandoning. Freedom was being revoked. The return was a violence, a headfirst dive into cold, dark water. The first thing I registered was pain, a dull, deep pain that radiated from every point of my being at once. It was the price of having a body again. Then sound, a rhythmic, impatient, electronic beep, a sound completely devoid of the harmony I had just known. It was the sound of the machine, of artifice. I opened my eyes, and the light that greeted me was an assault. A sickly yellow light from a fluorescent bulb on a lifeless white ceiling. It hurt. My eyes, which had only known the divine glow. I tried to move, and felt the rough fabric of a sheet, the cold metal of the bed rail in my hand. I was boxed in, contained. My body, which I barely remembered how to operate, was a heavy, fragile prison, and I had just been thrown back into solitary confinement. The first tear that ran down my face was not of joy for being alive. It was of deep mourning for having to come back. Of course, the doctors and nurses didn't understand. They spoke of a miracle, of a second chance at life. They smiled, relieved. But they couldn't know I didn't get a second chance to live. I got a glimpse of real life, life with a capital L. And that glimpse, that proof, changed everything. Fear, you know? That fear of death that sits in the back of our chests, that whispers to us on dark nights, that makes us build walls and accumulate treasures as if that could protect us. It just went away. It evaporated, vanished like morning mist under the strong sun. How could I fear what I now know to be the most glorious of liberations? I saw what comes next. I know with a certainty that transcends faith and becomes fact, that this life is just the vestibule, the waiting room for a great banquet. It's an important room, yes, where every interaction, every choice, every moment is precious. But it's not the main hall. It's not the final destination. And that's why I think I had to come back. That's why I'm here, with this tired voice speaking to you now. I didn't come back to collect more birthdays or see more seasons pass. I came back with a task, a message that burns in my chest like a slow, constant fire. And it is so simple that it almost escapes us in the noise of everyday life. Love. Simply love. Let go of the small hurts, the offenses we keep like stones in our pockets, the pride that serves as our armor, but also prevents us from embracing. Forgive. Forgive quickly. Forgive completely. Not because the other person deserves it, but because your heart deserves the lightness. Because the love we cultivate here, forgiveness we release, are the only things we take with us. They are the currency of the kingdom. When you get there, no one asks about your bank account, about the titles you held, about the diplomas on your wall. The only question that matters is, how did you love? So I ask you, don't be afraid. Don't be afraid of the day you have to close your eyes here for the last time. Because it's not an end. It's an awakening. It's the front door of your true home. The peace I felt, it wasn't made just for me. It's waiting for all of us. It's real. It's our inheritance, promised and guaranteed. While you are still in this waiting room, live. Live in a way that your heart already rehearses the melody from there. Love without measure. Forgive without hesitation. And know with all the certainty of your soul that you are infinitely loved, with a love that did not begin with your birth and will not end with your death, and that the journey back to that home, it is beautiful, and there is nothing to fear.